great to be here. Nice to see all our guests. So before I hand over to Matt, who's actually going to do a bit of scene setting, yeah, we've been very lucky in the last few years to started working outside the UK, and in particular in Germany, and felt very welcome, and it was a very generous commissioning culture. And so thinking about what we could bring to the 100 days, we thought it'd be great to share something of our experiences in Hamburg as a way of reciprocating. And we've done that by inviting Sophie Naue and Tristan Lannuzel, who organised the Bauforum that we were invited to. And they're going to say something about the history and I guess the practice of organising such an event. And the subtext, of course, is that, well, you know, how might this be relevant to London? Where does it differ from what we're already doing? But first off, Matt, who led a project on behalf of us in the office, is going to tell you a bit more about his involvement. So over to you, Matt.
Thanks, David. So I'm hoping everyone can see my screen. Yeah, so thank you. Hello, welcome. Thanks for joining us on this, which I think is the 80th day of the Architecture Foundation's 100-day studio. I'm Matt from David Kohn Architects, and I'm joined with David, and we have a real pleasure of introducing Sophie and Tristan today from Urbanista, who are one of Germany's leading participatory design and urban development consultancies. They're based in Hamburg, which is Germany's second biggest city, and then based there, Urbanista's work seeks to develop future visions and urban strategies and develop concepts for cities and regions in a kind of co-creative process. And as part of this work, they set up the Bauforum, last year's Bauforum. And it was a week-long program to rethink the future of particular aspects of Hamburg city planning. And we were fortunate enough to be invited to participate in the event, which saw over 150 designers from architecture, urban design, landscape, transport planning, science and culture come together with a fantastic integrated public program in Hamburg's Dichterhallen to rethink the Magistralen, which are the highways or boulevards of Hamburg. Historically, the Bauforum has been a tool which tackles big topics in the city's development. It was at a previous Bauforum that the idea of the Hafen City was formed. And although that project perhaps isn't without criticism, it kind of does demonstrate a really pioneering spirit and attitude towards collaborative and design-based approach to future planning. And Sophie and Tristan's talk will do perhaps a bit more to describe how the event worked. But our particular Bauforum was about these Magistralen, the corridors, the kind of city arteries, if you like. And at DK, kind of our work as part of the team, tried to think through particular kind of ideas or topics and thoughts to provoke kind of our team to depart on ideas about how we might tackle this kind of thought. So these are just some of the drawings and some kind of strap lines, if you will, that kind of prompted us into kind of bigger thinking. And I think what came of it was an idea about drawing, and this is a drawing made by the transport planner in our group, and this is perhaps where we bonded the most, and the kind of professional titles didn't really matter so much. And I think, yeah, to think about the future of this as an idea, what it means in the UK and in London is something that we're really interested in talking about. And I think David will say a bit more about our work to date on kind of these thoughts.
So that wasn't the only time that we were in Hamburg. A few months earlier, another initiative by the city authorities was to invite groups of teams to look at different suburbs of Hamburg. And this was particularly around housing and how to densify some of the suburban areas and give them a different role to play in the future of the city. And we were one of three that looked at Alsterdorf. And the next. So this is a suburb that was built around hospitals. So over the last 150 years, it has grown to accommodate lots of different types of respite home. As a consequence, it doesn't have any integrated public realm or public infrastructure. And so, next. This is a moment for us to talk about how it might become a place in its own right that has a relationship to the centre, and through the creation of a public realm that joined up all of these disparate facilities, but also crucially made them accessible, because there's a lot of people in wheelchairs and also mobility difficulties that none of the landscape had ever addressed. And so this would become a kind of satellite of the centre, but one that had a very particular positive character. Next. So the kind of hospital infrastructure we identified as lacking this kind of integrated public realm, and thought of these very particular types, so Le Palenster by Fourier and San Gimignano in Italy, as the kind of city of towers. And how, if you combine these, next, you would, for the first time, be able to make every building in the site accessible, and create this generous public realm that would tie all the facilities and become part of the identity of the district. So I show this as a kind of something amazing for us to be invited as a relatively young, small practice in London to think as part of, this was, I think, maybe a dozen sites that were looked at simultaneously. And then Matt was back a few weeks later looking at these Magistralen. And I think, yeah, I don't see the same happening in the UK of small international practices coming together for anything other than very occasional small projects or single master plans. But this kind of speculative questioning about the city seems something very exciting, and it was brilliant to be part of. So we wanted to invite Urbanista and Dr. Sophie Naue, who is an urbanist, a planner by training, and Tristan Lannuzel, who's an architect, very kindly agreed to talk us through how the history of this event, Bauforum, has influenced the city, and how they particularly staged it, which I guess could lead to questions about its relevance and potential exporting potential. Okay, over to you, Sophie.
Yeah, thank you, David. Thank you, Matt, for your kind introduction. I was just looking to share my screen. 1 second. Can you see it? Yeah, I think so. Okay, perfect. Yeah. Good evening to everybody. My name is Sophie, you already know. I'm here together with Tristan Lannuzel, and it's really a pleasure for us to be here and to have this opportunity to give this lecture together with David Kohn, architect. So, and to give you, or to give us the possibility to talk a little bit about what we did last summer with the Bauforum, but as well to talk a little bit more and specific about this format, and as well about these urban areas, the highways, magistrates, or boulevards, however you want to call them. So our lecture is called The Boulevards of Tomorrow, Rethinking Hamburg's Magistrates in a Festival of Planning Culture. And yeah, so we will focus on these subjects. And I think it's pretty important to look at the Bauforum because it has a really long tradition. It's an Hamburg-based planning format with over 40 years of tradition. And it's about huge areas or huge topics and development strategies with long-term perspectives. So it's not about small interventions or single projects. It really deals with the big problems of the city. So we have several Bauforums, or each epoch has their own Bauforum. So it's not an event or a format that Urbanista and we invented, but I think we worked with it and we developed it further. So if you go back in history, you can see that you have a Bauforum in the 85, it was in the old harbor, or it was a transformation process of the fish market. Then we had the Bauforum in the Hafen city, so an old harbor district, now becoming a new district of the city. We had one Bauforum which dealt with the neglected, monofunctional, more industrial areas. And we had the Bauforum with the IBA, the International Building Exhibition, to bring the inner city closer to the outskirts in the south, with a lot of small projects, but in total like a really huge project. So we have these large-scale urban development projects in Hamburg, which all began with a Bauforum. And I think it's a quite interesting format because it allows you to provide a huge range of flexibility for creative solutions and impulses to the city. And it's really that spatial and social changes often require like these unusual ideas, like these kind of out of the box thinking, and you don't have it in your everyday practice. If you have your work from 9 to 5, or architects and urban planners don't work from 9 to 5, they work a little longer, but it's often lacking like that. You have this kind of freedom, this kind of atmosphere and space to really think about these huge topics. So that's something special about the Bauforum. So you have this atmosphere to exchange ideas in a kind of atmosphere of free thoughts, having constructive debates, and you have the possibility to really try things out. So it's not in competition, because we as architects or urban planners know how a competition works. So you cannot really try things out, you have to produce. And here it's not about winning, it's more about working together and looking beyond the limits and looking at urban issues in like a really integrative manner, I think so. So with the last Bauforum, the Bauforum about the magistrates, we tried to continue this tradition. And the topic magistrates or arterial corridors are those areas, those run along the great urban highways. And you have different terms to describe them: avenues, boulevards, high streets, paseos. But I think it already reflects a little bit like the diversity of these particular urban areas. Matt showed it before. This is a plan of Hamburg. It's the map of Hamburg. It's our scope of action. So we chose 7 different magistrates in the 7 different districts. So Hamburg has 7 districts. So each district has a magistrate. No, we have more magistrates than these 7. It was really important to have a little bit like this balance, like to address one magistrate in each district. And they are quite complex, because it's not that they are long stretches or they have a length of more than 12 kilometers, and every magistrate is different. As well, their sections are pretty different. And it's because all these arterial corridors were created by a multitude of individual decisions, and largely without strategic planning. So the course of a magistrate is marked by heterogeneous structures, and at the same time, it's like some contrasts are marked in these places. So you have these heterogeneous structures, but as well, you have enormous spatial potential and qualities. So these magistrates play like a really, really important role in our development, because for new usages, attractive open spaces. So that was the idea behind selecting the magistrates for a Bauforum last year. I think it would be interesting to have a quick look at the current situation. I told before, like every magistrate is different. We have different histories, different programs, but we have as well similar challenges they face. And if we look at them regarding the residential construction, they provide like a diversity of typologies, densities. So we have this low densities with single houses. We have these inner city structures where we have these block structures from the 20s or block structures from the 60s and 50s. And all these arterial corridors are entrances to the city, a kind of first address, district centers, and at the same time, they form transit areas, breaks, and barriers. So you can see it on this picture, like this first contact with the city, when you come from the periphery to the city center. So you have this entrance situation to the city. It's always not this high architectural impression that we have. You have as well these car designed drive-in structures. I think they are pretty normal for the metro trails. You have this small city centers, like in the third or second line of the metro trail, because for us it was pretty important not to look only at the road, just to focus as well the surrounding areas and look what's behind these high streets. This picture is one I really like because metro trails often go along important infrastructure routes like railways or motorways, green corridors. So they often are like this kind of barrier to the city. And you can see on this picture, they often are over-dimensioned traffic areas. So they don't have only this connectivity aspect, they also divide the city. Even if they run through like really homogeneous quarters, they can divide the city into, or the districts into in north and south, east and west, and not only being like this connectivity points. Yeah, and with their heterogeneous architectural and social structures and traffics, they shape the face of metropolis and are thus a focal point for the greatest challenges and opportunities for the future development of the city. I think that's really important. But if we look at the spatial dimension, I already mentioned that it's important not only to look at the road, we can look at the backside of a metro trail, and so we will find like different types, different areas, and I think it's pretty important, or it was pretty important for the teams in the Bauforum to focus these surrounding areas of the metro trail. They are also often flanked by monofunctional structures. And a lot of people, and I think that's quite important, see the metro trails as non-places. But people live next to these corridors. And it's important to recognize that there are everyday life around these metro trails. And that's quite important, and not only to see it as a non-place where you go just from A to B. And for sure, as well in Hamburg and in each city, you can find historical settlements with kind of architectural value along the metro trails. So what unites all those major metropolitan highways is their diversity of use, the mobility areas, and their potential for future development solutions. So it's, they are really different vital roles, or they play different vital roles in Hamburg's development. And then in these places, as you can see in the picture, they can make an essential contribution to solve the central question of housing in Hamburg. But it's quite important that you don't leave it only to the real estate developers, that the city of Hamburg and its inhabitants decide as well how the development along these roads should proceed and how these metro trails should look in the next 10, 20 or 30 years. So. Of this reason, we did some statements that we gave as well to the teams, and it was quite important for us to see these corridors as laboratories of the moment, like where you can try things out. And as I said before, they can really make an important contribution to housing provision. And as well, it's along the magistrates that the metropolis can show how to grow in a sustainable and healthy way, not only to focus like the traffic and the mobility, is how you can grow in these areas. Magistrates are as well the location for the economy of tomorrow. And they do a huge contribution to the emancipation of the outer city. I think that's something quite important as well, not only to focus to the inner city, to have as well this view to the outer city and what can magistrates do. So they can change from barriers to intermediary spaces of future mobility. I think that's something quite important, how we want our cities to look like in the future. And so our head of planning, Franz Josef Höing, had this observation: all topics of our urban development that we will be dealing with in the next 20 to 30 years are gathered along the main roads. I think it's something like a kind of agenda setting for Hamburg, and it's kind of a political role. And with this, I will hand over to Tristan. He will talk about this political.
Merci. Thank you, Sophie. Thank you, everybody.
You want to share your own screen, Tristan?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's already working. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yeah, super.
Perfect.
So this is Franz Josef Höing. This is the head of planning of the city of Hamburg. He is as well the head of design. He is in all projects of the city where the image of the city is going to be changed, he has a role to play. But as he's the chef of planning from the city of Hamburg, and Hamburg is a state, so he has a huge power to change things, to set agendas. But at the same time, as Sophie said before, you've got 7 districts in Hamburg, and those districts so have a very high sovereignty. They decide what they're doing in the space. So you've got this two opposite between the head of planning and head of design. On the other side, the people that realize they're making the city. On the other side, they are producing the city. And Franz Josef Höing is not. He's our client. He's the person who invited everybody to this Bauforum. He is the purchaser of this Bauforum. And at the same time, he was working 20 years ago for Frank Walter, and was the older Oberbaudirektor, head of planning. As the name in German is Oberbaudirektor. It's very clear. And he organized about the last Bauforum for him. So he knows exactly what can do a Bauforum. He knows it from inside. And he came to Hamburg back. He was head of planning in the city of Bremen, and after get to Cologne, and came back in Hamburg in his city that is really no good now from inside. And he came 2017 or 2017, and he knows he's going to stay 10 years now in the city. So he knows he's got time for him. And this Bauforum is for him the possibility to get an agenda, to define how his goals for the next 10 years. He has, the Bauforum is for him as well, at the same time, the possibility to bring the cooperation with those districts, because he can give the direction, he can invite the people to think in another direction, he can inspire them, he can develop programs, but he can't do it. He's not the one who is realizing the city, he's not producing the city at the same time. So it's a very special moment it's a special position for him. So he had to bring everybody together, all the energy of the resource of the city together, on the political one, the developers together, and at the same time, the Bauforum is not an easy thematic. You have to bring them together so that they can work together, because when he wants to change the image of the city, or to work to develop with those magistral or highways or high roads, he knows he can't do only one. He has to go the whole one. So all the 40, I think there are 14 big roads in Hamburg, and he has to show how you can do it, how you can manage with it. He can to find solutions, or perhaps finds the right. And he as well has the legitimacy to develop develop this question in the city. At the same time, Hamburg is developed with this plan. This is a plan of an older one, older Oberbaudirektor. The best known is Fritz Schumacher, who was as well Baudirektor in Cologne. So you see, 1 century ago, this history is repeating itself. And this plan is showing. This plan is from 1917, so it's quite a century ago, showing how should Hamburg develop itself along those big roads. So there's a very long story that has been reactivated in the city. It's very interesting to see that the cities are not being done in a few years. He's already know, okay, I'm there 10 years, but I can push the development of the city for the next 20 years. So it's a they're not so much ahead of planning in the city. So it's a quite clear position. It's a very special position. And as he decided to make the Bauforum, he decided, okay, I know it's a very complicated thematic, and I had to bring everybody together. I have to bring the politic as well to this question, and I have to bring the whole city together. So he said, okay, when I want to organize this Bauforum, I've got to find the right building. And he decided to make in one of the best known museum of the city, the Deichtorhalle. It's a museum for contemporary art and photography. It's a very special, so building of staying alone. There is so much place in front. And he just managed to get 1 week between 2 exhibitions. To say, okay, I take 1 week in the middle. Okay, so I get 1 week in the middle. And then they say, okay, we have to find an office that can organize it. And we just say, okay, when you want to match so much, so you want to the whole city, you want to have 7 highways, you want to have this museum been working for 1 week as a big workshop. And at the same time, okay, you have to think, we said it has to be a festival. It has to be something else. It's not only a workshop where the people are working and showing what they can do. It's a moment of exception. It's a special moment. You have to imagine 1 week, 7 measures, 14 teams. So you already said at the start, I don't want to have 1 team working on 1 highway or high road. I want to have this all time having 2 teams to work at the same time to get different solutions, because it's not all, not solution, or this different question, I think. And we already know, okay, 14 teams, it's going to be 250 people working 1 week together, not each for us. It's not the old Bauforums. They were having 1 office, 1 person, 1 star who was coming with a small team with a few students, and they were developing an idea. Here it was clear it's too big. It's too big because 12 kilometers can't manage 1 office. It's can't manage. You need different fields of they work together, and you have to need at the same time people coming from administration of the district area level and coming from the state level, bring students together. It was okay. It's going to be huge. And this is the split you already seen once. Is for us the last day when the teams are presenting what they've done, and you can imagine 14 teams, half an hour for each team. You've got 7 hours presentation, and it's the minimum, because half an hour just to present what you've done on 1 week, it's not so much. So it has to be very clear. And for us, the problem was to say, okay, we have to be sure that the teams have something to say, or that they can do something, because for us the project can't fail when you're bringing so much people together, taking the big museum of the city and bring all this energy together. We had to be sure that something is going to come out with the output has to be there. And at the same time, we can't have revolution from the office. From the office is saying we don't want to do it like this. So we have to find the right dynamic for the whole week, and to be sure that at the end, something is happening that is taking the whole city for the next 10 years. So we said, okay, we have to bring keynotes. We have to bring we have to provoke a kind of provocation for the office that we're working. So we invited Paola Vigano, also from PFL Lausanne, or from Italian, to speak about large scale projects. We invited Jeff Speck from New York to discuss about a walking city. We had this discussion about a new form of mobility. And we had this keynotes can't only be for the people that are working in the museum. We had to be sure that we are inviting the whole city, so everybody can get a profit of those keynotes. It was, we had every afternoon, every evening, we had program, and we had different kind of programs. We had this moments where different cities could met together and discuss about a problematic. We have got the head of planning of Munich, Frau Merck, Herr Oehing, the head of planning of Hamburg, and I can't know his name, the head of planning of the city of Hanover. And on the right side, they're discussing an hour about what the different perspective they have in their own city and how they manage to deal about those places or spaces. We had discussions with developers that were on the stage and develop how they could perhaps develop new projects in those places. So they have this kind of every dimension. At the same time, we had to be sure that the people that are visiting this place have the possibility to exchange with the teams that are working, and they should understand what's happening. So we had at the same time an exhibition explaining what are we doing, what's the problem, what's the questions we are asking or we are working on, and find a way that the people can get inside. The Deichtorhalle was open on one side, but where the teams were working, it was just, we had to check who's going inside, and so to manage that they can get in and have this kind of discussions with the teams. We had the universities that have been students who could participate to this Bauforum. So they were working half a year on this thematic, so they can present their their questions. And so they have as well a whole afternoon with deals from the universities. And we had to manage to find a way that the people are coming, because the question of the highways, it's not the special question that everybody want to speak about it. It's not easy to understand what are you speaking about. So and at the same time, it has to be a special moment for the teams that are working there. So we had as well at the same time this cultural program when you had evening concerts. We had an art exhibition at the same time, because we had this installation, a video installation, where you could make an experience. What kind of places did you find in those highways? So they have a video installation, and we thought, okay, not everybody is done to come. Is going to in the city is going to come in this museum. So we had to find a way that the people are get out to go to the people outside in the city. So we had at the same time as well performances, walks, performances, lectures on those in those rooms, and perhaps hope that some people hear about it and then come. And we had at the same time this kind of a video installation or digital installations that to get people that are outside, that are living outside, had the possibility to give something back to this museum. So there's different levels of interaction, of exchange, of discussion. You have to understand the people that are coming from all over the world to work 1 week, but we have to be sure to understand what's how the space are working. So we had at the same time to deal that we had 250 people that are working. So we had to organize at the same times with bus tours that the designers go outside and get look on those places. So organize. And this picture is a very special moment where Franz Josef is on the right side listening to someone from the district explaining so you had at the same time this the perspective from the district and the perspective of the state, and that are discussing about those places. So very special. We had to organize this museum, and this picture is for me very important because we thought we were organizing a big workshop, a festival of planning, a big hackathon, but as we understand it's going to be in the museum, I didn't feel it. This place is sacred. It's a very special room. We had to each decision how we're going to organize those places. It was a museum. Everything is art. So we had to deal with the owners of the museum, also what's allowed, what's not allowed, and they were just saying, okay, it's okay. The aesthetic is okay. The design is okay. The art you work in the place is okay. And we had to organize 14 cabinets for the people who are working, at the same time to manage that they discuss with each other. So it was really important that not only the two teams that are working on the same measures or the same road having a discussion, it was at the same time necessary that all the people talking with each other, what you've seen there, what kind of solution you're developing. So we had this is the cabinet where they're working. Each team has their own methods, formats, some are doing with models or with drawings. And we had this kind of wall where the people could show outside what they're doing inside, this kind of transparency, interesting. So you can ask them, say, I'll go inside and ask them, I've seen this, please explain it to me. And that each team see what are doing the other teams. It's a very special moment. Very interesting. Also, you can see the different metaphysics. And you had at the same time this, during the week, we had to organize for 14 teams as well, those feedbacks. So that's the districts and the state had the possibility to make a comment about what's going to show, to perhaps change directions or ask questions, or perhaps give advice in which direction they could develop their own work. And for me as a French guy, there was this something very special. I knew when you have to tune so much people that are working together for so long, day and night, because the museum was open the whole night, because they were all time working. It was really important to get the best chief of the city. So this eating was very important. So at the same time, we had to organize this. And this picture is for me the moment where we were very, very happy. The planners are just away from their offices. They were in a special moment where they were only thinking, and they were just not dealing with everything else. It was the real moment, was the essence of the Bauforum, is where they're not thinking about, they're just focusing on this one question. And this is a picture of the team, also the whole Urbanista team who deal with this week. It's not, we had much more people working for us, but this is the making it possible. Each wishes had to be made, have to be to find a solution also. And at the same time, we are planners, we are as well as the architects, and we had to manage it to be sure that the people could understand and could work the whole week. So we have already organizing the work before, the month before the Bauforum, we were organizing those dossiers, or help the people that are going to work, to help them to understand how the places are working, what kind of planning is already happening, what kind of space they have, give them information so that they can quickly start work, and not just at the end of the week say, it would be better when we have known that. It has to be clear. It wasn't possible. It has to be it has a solution. What's been presented at the end of the week had to be coherent with what was already happening in the city. And the very special moment, the very special thing, it was to organize who's coming, who's invited. Franz had to decide, I would like to have people coming from the local expertise or local offices. You want to have people coming from the national, from whole Germany, and people coming from the outside from Germany, so from international expertise. In each team, we had one office coming from outside from Germany, from Europe, an office coming from the national, 2 locals, and we had as well mobility experts. We had artists or free thinker. We had students. We had local administration and state administration. So it was very big. And the big special thing was how you can manage that at the end they're not thinking about, this is my idea or my project. It was very specific to bring this collective thinking, this collective production, and not this kind of, this is my own. The authorship or the authorship had to be clear that it's the group and not the people. And we had to be sure that it's about formulating the right question, that the teams understand in which direction it has to be. Not looking for, I would like to make this, to give this solution so that I can realize it. It's not away from this whole competition. It was asking questions, opening doors, trying to find a new way to make a new interpretation of those places. And it was rethinking these highways as urban areas. I think it's for me very difficult now to show the outputs, because it's not mine, it's theirs, and you've got just so much, because 14 teams going in 14 different directions. It's quite impossible to explain everything. At the end of the presentation, it was clear we had to manage that the people can understand it, and it was the archive was really important, because the problem they had in the old Bauforum, it was from Bauforum you don't have so much materials or a few plans, but everything has disappeared. So we was organizing already an archive during the Bauforum, so to be sure that small drawing that's be done, and said that the people just, I can't throw it away, had to be take away and be sure that you can archive it, so that, because everything has it's interesting. And it was clear that we will film everything. This archive, we've got 14 films, half an hour explaining everything, so that it's possible 1 year afterwards, 2 years afterwards, to go back and to, how did they measure it? What did it mean? These are a few sketches from the offices that have been working, so trying to develop new interpretation of those places. I showed them just, it's there. So I just showed them. I would like to show you perhaps one special one, because it was interesting to show you how it works. There's those two, when two teams are working at the same time about the same places. This is the ring 2. It's the one of those going all around the center. And there are two teams that go into totally different direction. The one said, the ring 2, we don't need it anymore because it's a huge mobility infrastructure. You don't need it because in the future we don't have the same problem. So they just develop much more ring 2s, so more ring 3, 4, 5, and bring them together. And they own each ring had its own function or his own attitude, or this was problematic. And the other team was just saying, the ring 2 have never existed because it was infrastructure wasn't being produced. It was putting roads together and saying it's ring 2. It was this kind of mindset. And they say, okay, let's break the mindset and develop micro solutions, micro structures that can still get this ring 2 function, but at the same time develop each area could have its own urban solution, urban structure that's been developed. I can just invite you to go to this this address and to go and see those 7 hours film, because it's really, really important, and I can't give it back. It's impossible. I'm just showing how much. And when I said it's just a start, Franz Oehing has got the next 10 years and it's going to go further, and it's going further. We had a few months later having a program where you have an exhibition of and so for the people that wasn't there in the summer, to see what was the output of the Bauforum. And at the same time, you had to the next step, having a discussion about how can we go further, what can be the role of the districts, what have we learned about this in the Bauforum. And they are going further. You've got at the end of this year, which should come a publication, and the districts are already working further and developing this huge process. The Bauforum is just the starting point for the future development of Hamburg's magistrat. And this was my last picture. I hope it was clear.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Tristan. And Sophie. Ellis, I think that's the kind of formal part. And I think time-wise, we've done well. There's time for questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Steve, first of all, that was super inspiring. So, and I've got lots of, I'm immediately excited by the idea of a London, how London might learn from this. Stephen Boxall, you've got a couple of questions in the chat box. I think the first one might have been answered already, but I'm going to unmute you. Everybody, do just put your name in the chat box if you want to ask a question, and I'll come to you. Stephen, I'm going to unmute you. Or asking you to unmute. You there?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, my first question about community involvement, I think, has been answered, but it just makes me think of London's Old Kent Road and the Old Kent Road opportunity area, and it just strikes me that what's currently proposed there is a total wasted opportunity. And could we do something like that on the Old Kent Road, or this on the Old Kent Road? Is it too late, and how do we persuade the planners in London and that part of London to do something like this?
I mean, I perhaps I should speak, given that you'll probably know Tristan Sophie will know the Old Kent Road even less than I do, but I don't know it so well that I can speak knowledgeably, but I suppose what I am aware of and what I took away from visiting Hamburg was this tantalizing prospect that the Hafen city represents, which is, again, I think as Matt pointed out, it's not without its shortcomings. And I think one could talk a lot about which communities have access to it now and which don't, because it's a very expensive area. But I think the coherence of the project is very impressive. And I think this magistralen idea, that the idea that it might actually deliver identity that has coherence in these corridors, even if the identity is one of an augmented heterogeneity. I mean, I really enjoyed Sophie's photographs because of their matter-of-factness and a kind of warmth towards urbanities that are often dismissed or considered somehow secondary. And I felt that the photography made it feel valued. And I think that's something that in London, if I conjure images of, say, the Old Kent Road development, it's the speculation that's foremost in your mind and not the imagination. One's not left with the idea of a place. And I think it's interesting, this question of what kind of agency allows that to happen, and maybe it comes to the role of a city planner. I know in the history of London it's been much debated, should there be one? If I think back to the GLA's Urban Design Unit, which was a really impressive organisation that was very influential, and sadly perhaps it was part disbanded. And I think it's probably through agencies like that that are able to act to bring much greater coherence to projects. And I don't know, Tristan, I don't know, Stephen, Tristan, whether there's a thought about what kind of leadership's necessary.
Franz Oehing wasn't in the front. It was this very specific moment. He was all the time on the back side. It's okay, also checking that the results is going to be here. And he's organizing the whole power resource of the city on the local level and on the higher level together. It's not the person who he's not the owner, he's not the author, it's not his oeuvre. There is a very specific oeuvre along 1 century with this position, and there's a legacy. It's clear he wants to leave something at the end. But in Germany, you have to understand that the administration is very powerful. There's they're much more, I think, for me, much more powerful as a politics, because they are staying about 20 years, 30 years, and making this coherence about a long time. It's with this Bauforum, it's not possible anymore for the next 15 years not to speak about, each time you're having a project, who is having near to one of those, and not any of those, not as well the magistral, the highways we haven't deal with. At the same time, you will have all the time each project from the architect, from developers, from the city, from districts, or and every dimension, up for a park or housing projects, or they will have to deal with this question: what are you doing here, and what kind of currents are you bringing? They will have to bring a position and say, okay, we learn from, or that we are going against, but they will have to say something. It's this kind of get away from this laissez-faire. I think Oehing had another sentence to say, every development the last 15 years in those places was just a small thing dealing with another small thing, and you didn't have any currents. It was all times, okay, you do what you want, you do what you want, you do what you want. It's this kind of, and it was happening, not anymore. And now it's just kind of looking for the next level of currents. And I think the leadership it's not so important at this moment, because he's already have his leadership. He's in every competition that is very important for the whole city. As the image of the city, he's inside. He will be part of the jury. So he has the possibility at each moment, each week, to get small impulse in this development. But on this question, it's bring everybody together. And there's a very special, I think, a special moment is at the same time for the whole administration of the state level and of the district level. They learned one week along to work together. So there's not only the question of the urban development. There's the same way, as I said, at the same moment, this is this kind of people working together and going away from this war between those two levels. Okay, we can work together. They know each other. They learn from each other, and they see that each person can bring something inside in it. So I think you bring at the same time some content, and at the same moment bring soft skills and bring it together.
I just want to add something for these your question from the community engagement, because I think it's quite important still, because in the Bauforum, we find some different solutions and ways, but I think it's quite important to ask the question, who is the community? Because these magistrates are really, really long roads, like with over 12 kilometers. And I think it's really a future challenge to really break it down, to look, okay, who is the community, who we have to involve, in which time, and how we can really deal with people who live next to the magistrates. And that's something that will happen on the district level. So we have the 7 districts, and that's something that happened on this level. And for this reason, I think it's quite important that as well people from the different districts participated during the Bauforum, and they got an idea of these broader visions, of these huge visions for this magistrates, and then they can bring it down to the district level and as well look who we have to involve, because sometimes there are so many neighborhoods. You have people like from the economy field, you have people like just living there, you have the third and second line, so you have this surrounding. So then it's really important to break it down, I think.
But at the moment, the Bauforum said to the city said to all those people, we matter of those places, we matter of this problematic, those highways, those high roads, or something that is we want to do something, because you can't have a huge project, but like the huge week like this, that's been the press was looking at it, the political was speaking about it, that's really present in the city, and it's the kind of saying we matter. We want to develop it.
I guess this is probably a question for David and Matt. There seems such a gulf between the kind of planning culture we have in the UK and this sort of initiative. I guess one might say that in Britain we have a culture of development control rather than proactive planning. Stephen's question just now about those dread words, the Old Kent Road Opportunity Area. We know that the Old Kent Road Opportunity Area does not involve any actual planning. It's, there's no physical imagination of that place in advance of it happening. That there are some criteria that are being applied, but there's no spatial imagination really being brought to bear on it. How do you see any? Do you see any? Are you optimistic in any way about our current planning culture? Could it accommodate this sort of initiative?
I was reminded in thinking about this evening of the Outer London Fund and the work of, I think, like Gort Scott was a practice that did a lot of work for the GLA around high streets. And there were some really fantastic drawings and an idea about high streets. But I think, so it's not that there's a lack of ideas or practitioners willing to dedicate themselves to the cause. there does seem to be this issue about the short-termism of agendas, because I think, you know, I go back to this sense in Hamburg, which is obviously a very different city to London, but nonetheless, that they will see it through, and that there's an appropriate longevity to the idea of delivery that is that makes sense with the question. And I think what seems very difficult in the UK, you know, probably a lot to do with for political reasons, is to marry that kind of repeat visiting of ideas over what would be decades. But I think that, you know, I kind of feel like one has to be endlessly optimistic, because it's just a question of continuous advocacy. I mean, I suppose one could worry that Brexit represents, you know, from my perspective, a further distancing of ideas. But that's perhaps why being invited to Hamburg just seems such a positive thing, and, you know, encouraging return visits. You know, there'll be so many fantastic young practices involved in this program that have something to offer London. There are lots of diverse practices in London that have a role to play in its future too. But it's kind of, how could they all work together? And I think I have had an experience of charrettes in London, but they're again really short, and I think it's the scale that feels, there's a kind of ambition and scale and longevity that we'll have to continuously advocate for.
We've got a comment from Michael Dring, who was speaking last night. You have it good in London. Birmingham is an opportunity area. But I'm going to unmute Tony Fretton, who's got a question. Tony.
Well, I'm going to talk from the perspective we have working in Flanders and Holland, where there's a structure of pre-planning, and it's sometimes done by municipalities, and sometimes in commissioned competitions or studies. And for example, Iberg, the new island in the river, was planned partly by, or master planned by Klaas and Kohn, and they're very skilled in making something that's realizable with developers and also other actors such as self-builders. So it's very successful. I mean, nothing in cities is entirely successful, because quite often in Holland you end up with a zoo of buildings, but it's more successful in the UK. The UK's structural problem is its idea of property. And the planning system, the development control system in the UK is subservient to ideas of property. And it's actually tremendously wasteful, because in the Netherlands or in Flanders, you're given an urban design and you can only build to that. You know what you're doing. But it also means that developers know what they can pay for the site. And the UK, because the planning structures are so ambiguous and open to negotiation, it means that land prices raise, you know, they're speculated. And so we have a real problem in the UK of structured approaches to development in the UK, certainly visionary ones. Some of that's been met by enlightened developers. For example, in King's Cross and Granary Square, it's actually very successful, and that's been done by a developer who's developed the master plan, worked with what exists. But what I'd say is that in a way, that situation I'm describing in the UK allows British architects to bring something back to the European situation, which is, or our cousins in Europe, which is an empirical ability to work with what exists. And you know, the project we did in central Copenhagen worked with what existed, and the local reception to it was of amazement that somehow it let local people see the city, see their own city. So there's a particularly empirical contribution made available from the British way of thinking, but it doesn't really do much in its own country, sadly. In Birmingham, I really don't know.
Thank you so much, guys. I think we need to circulate this to everyone we know at the GLA, because yeah, there's so evidently a sort of model here that warrants replication.